What's going on, all you Minties? Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, and today is the day that I get to do an advanced overview of the Captain Britain Omnibus from Marvel Comics. So, let's get started. Before getting started, a huge thank you to David Gabriel and the folks in Marvel for sending us an advanced copy of this omnibus. This omnibus is due out in the direct market and book market on April 12th. What we are looking at here is the standard edition cover. This is the one that's going to be available everywhere. And here on the left-hand side, Marvel was kind enough to also send us a direct market cover. So you have two different, but the spines are also different. You have the classic costume here and the newer-ish costume in the standard edition. The backs are also different. On the standard edition, you have the Fury right there. On the direct market, you have the classic Captain Britain costume with the Red Skull in the background, Roma and Merlin back there. For Queen and Country, that blurb is still the same, or I'm sorry, this right here is still the same, even the font they use. It's interesting that the ISBN, though, is a little bit different here in this image. And T Plus Marvel, the book retails for $125. Now, underneath the dust jacket, they are identical. Here's a closer look at this image under the dust jacket. Like I said, this is for both of, no matter direct market or standard edition covers. We have a image of Jim Jaspers up there with, of course, Captain Britain. Now, some of the stories in here have been previously collected in this long out-of-print omnibus. This is an omnibus reprint that you all asked for, but this is a lot more content than this. We're going to talk about the differences here, and also look at the differences in the internal artwork to see if there's any differences in the colors. But this one came out years ago. It's been long out of print. It did have two covers. And yeah, I know that a lot of people wanted this, and I can't believe that Marvel actually reprinted Captain Britain. That's so cool, because that was one that made it in our top 10 a couple of years ago that I was thinking, no way does this get reprinted. But not only did it get reprinted, it got reprinted with a whole bunch of other things. So let's take a look in here. We'll do a comparison in a little bit, talk about the stories. I'll talk about who exactly Captain Britain is, and go into some of the stories without giving too many spoilers. And of course, the relations to Psylocke and the new Captain Britain in the pages of Excalibur. Alright, let's get this book opened and talk about the brief history of Captain Britain. But before we do, let's talk about the actual contents after we look at the writers, the pencilers, the inkers here, the colorists. There's this image of the Fury, which to me has always been one of the creepiest characters that has ever surfaced in the pages of comics. Letterers, assistant editors, and editors. There is a coloring note right here, originally published in black and white, Marvel Superheroes 377 to 388. All these books were colored for the 1995 for the reprinted X-Men archives featuring Captain Britain 1 through 7. We'll talk a little bit about the reprints too here in a little bit. So that's something to take note. This is the exact same material that was previously released in trade paperbacks. It's had a couple of hardcovers. So here is your table of contents. There seems to be a lot of issues of Captain Britain, right? We're going all the way to 39. But when you take into consideration they're all just about 7 to 8 pages long, sometimes 5, not a lot of content. Same thing with Daredevils and Super Spider-Man and Captain Britain, Incredible Hulk Weekly. But we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. So let's talk about the content here. So as I mentioned, this collects material from Captain Britain 1 through 39, Super Spider-Man and Captain Britain 231 to 247, the Hulk comic number 1, 3 through 46, Hulk Weekly 47 through 55, 57 through 63, Marvel Superheroes 377 through 388, Daredevils 1 through 11, Mighty World of Marvel 7 through 16, Captain Britain, the 1985 series 1 through 14, Marvel Tales 131 to 133, and it also includes Marvel Team Up 65 and 66, New Mutants Annual 2, and X-Men Annual number 11. So, as I mentioned previously, a whole lot more than this. However, in this omnibus, you have the two Captain America stories. These stories right here, written by Mike Carlin from 305 to 306, and Paul Neary doing the pencils. Those are not collected in this omnibus, and I know people have asked me, is there any way that Marvel could add them in there? I think we were already dealing with a lot of pages. We're talking about 1,360 pages already. So that is the material that's collected in here. Now, let me just give you a quick little breakdown as to what that material is. Because in the UK, the way that the comic books were coming out, they were coming out in an anthology series. So you would have Captain Britain #3 here, and only featuring about 5 to 7 pages of the actual story featuring Brian Braddock and how he became Captain Britain. And then the rest of it would be like stories from Fantastic Four or Nick Fury, kind of like in the way that Marvel used to have Journey into Mystery or Tales to Astonish. That's the way they were being published in the UK. However, this is the very first time that the UK had their own original content with Captain Britain. The interesting thing about that, it was London-born Chris Claremont got to write it. Herb Trimpe was the artist on it. So all these writers and artists that worked on the book were all based out of America. And then they shipped over the stories to the UK and they saw it print over there. I always found that pretty interesting. Even though this is like original UK stories, the creators were based out of America here. So let's just talk about Captain Britain. What exactly is collected in here? If you're only familiar with him because of the pages of Excalibur, the original Excalibur, or the new Excalibur by Tini Howard, well, it is that same character. It is Brian Braddock. And really quickly, let's just talk about his origin, because it's a pretty unique and very British origin, that he is an intern at this facility here. This is the Darkmoor facility. He's a college student, and he gets invaded by this character named Joshua Stragg, known as the Reaver. Now, he escapes on his motorcycle, and he gets into an accident. He's dying, and he's saved by these two characters right here, Merlin and his daughter Roma. And he's given a choice. Does he take the Sword of Might or the Amulet of Right? And Brian Braddock, as he's laying there dying, says, you know, I've never been much of a fighter, so I'm going to pick up the amulet. And with that, he is transformed into this character known as Captain Britain. And then, of course, the Reaver takes the sword and becomes this character, right? Like Dark Reaver or something like that. And that is his origin story. So through these pages, he becomes a superhero. He has a staff, and he can transform because of the amulet. Now, like I mentioned, Chris Claremont and Herb Trimpe do the first few story arcs, and then eventually Chris Claremont, after I think 10 issues or so, decides to leave the book. Then we have Gary Friedrich coming in and doing some stories in here. Larry Lieber supplying some of the stories. So these early stories, like I said, have been collected before in trade paperback. They've been collected in the hardcover. There were 2 hardcovers long out of print right now. So this is the first time they've been collected in oversized format. There's Dr. Sin. We are introduced to a lot of characters you may be familiar with, like his twin sister Betsy Braddock, his older brother Jamie Braddock, Dr. Sin, the Slaymaster, and the Fury, Roma, Merlin, the Crazy Gang, Gatecrasher, and the TechNet, and just a bunch of characters that play a huge important part later on if you're reading the pages of Excalibur, like Saturnine. This is all where they make their first appearance. Now, the series was losing... let's talk about the team-up. There is a huge, long team-up with Captain America here. They stop the Nazis from invading London. They take on... I've always loved that butt attack. It's a pretty powerful move there, Brian. They stop the Nazis from taking over London. And what I was going to say is that, sadly, because of the cells, it started dwindling down, so they started to try to cut corners and save money. And one of the things they did as of this particular issue right here, issue 24, is they took away the color and they made the comic black and white. But even that really couldn't save it. And that was in the middle of the Captain America story, too. Even that couldn't save it, so sadly, eventually the series was canceled. But the stories kept going because the editor saw just potential for this character. So instead of canceling the stories, they just canceled the title Captain Britain, and the story moved on to Super Spider-Man and Captain Britain. Now, those two characters throughout this magazine never really met. It's not until the Marvel team-up that they met. But this was a way to continue Captain Britain's storytelling of his adventures. So after that series got canceled, we have Marvel Team-Up 65 and 66. Now, this is the first American appearance of Captain Britain. Even though he had appeared in those Marvel UK books previously, it's not until this particular issue right here in 77, drawn by John Byrne and written by Chris Claremont, now we get the first appearance of Captain Britain. And I remember when collecting comics, I was trying to get the first appearance of all these X-Men characters. And that was one that I struggled with because some people consider this to be the first appearance of Captain Britain. Other purists, of course, consider Captain Britain #1 to be his first appearance. I never did find a Captain Britain #1, but I did get the Marvel team-up. Now, Super Spider-Man and Captain Britain was canceled. As a matter of fact, these 2 issues right here were later cut down into different chapters and put into the last few issues of that particular magazine. And then the story of Captain Britain continued in the pages of the Hulk comic. Now, this is pretty interesting because they team him up with the Black Knight. And it feels more like a Black Knight story than a Captain Britain story. He kind of plays a minimal role in here. But we do get the inclusion of Merlin and Roma in here, the other world, which if you're familiar with, that has appeared all over the place. But the biggest one, of course, being Excalibur and Teenie Howard's run. It did play a big role in Otherworld of Uncanny X-Force. But this is mainly, like I said, a Black Knight story featuring Captain Britain. But the most important thing is that there's about to be a change for the character. And we'll get there in a second. During this particular story, they do team him up with these elvish creatures, and one of them is named Jackdaw, who becomes kind of his sidekick when the character goes through a big change. Not just through the creators that are writing and drawing the story, but also a physical change for Captain Britain. So after this story arc with the Black Knight in the Hulk comic and all the other world characters, we get Captain Britain now coming back to a monthly series on his own, and this is the Marvel Superheroes comic. It is back in color, and this time it is Alan Davis doing a lot of the artwork. And Alan Davis stays on the book for a long time. Now, it starts off with David Thorpe as the main writer on this. We get the Crazy Gang, we get Jackdaw there, he comes back as more of a sidekick, and Dave Thorpe didn't really last that long. We do have the return of Saturnine in this, and like I mentioned, the Crazy Gang. Dave Thorpe stayed just a couple of issues until he is replaced. And he is replaced by sort of a newcomer to comics, and that gentleman's name is Alan Moore. So Alan Moore was one of the biggest things to have happened to Captain Britain. I don't need to tell you what he is famous for in the pages of Swamp Thing, or in the pages of Supreme, or in the pages of Miracle Man, Marvel Man. We'll talk about Miracle Man and Marvel Man here in a little bit, but it was interesting to see him do what he did with those characters, and that is pretty much deconstruct the character of Captain Britain and kind of give him a new status quo, which is exactly what happens through his pages. So in the pages, when Alan Moore takes over, we have something called the Jasper Warps. Something horrible happens to his friend, something horrible happens to him, and he is reborn through Merlin and Roma. Now, Merlin and Roma look a little bit different than they did towards the beginning, but all of that is explained through these pages. And when he is reborn, he is given kind of a new start on life. And it's a lot different than what happened previously. The things that Alan Moore was doing through this book hadn't really been done before. You know, the very big chunk of all this black and white stuff, meeting other superheroes, teaming up. There's a Dracula story in here. Even the Black Knight story just didn't seem like it was fun. It was good. But this felt like, holy crap, there are some high stakes in this story. And if Captain Britain isn't able to pull this off, how the hell are we going to get out of this? That's what this felt like. One of the things I forgot to note was when he came back to this world, this is the actual pages, the staff and the costume kind of combined into the new costume. So he no longer needs that staff that was given to him by Merlin and Roma. But yes, Captain Britain by Alan Moore. This is the creation of what is known as the 616 universe, because we learn that there are other Britain Corps, so much so that there is a character, Linda McQuillan, I think that was her name, who is Captain UK. She's from another Earth where Jaspers has taken over with his fury, and they have destroyed all her world. And she is the last remaining character from that particular Earth. Yeah, the Fury are some creepy characters. But it's through these pages that we learn about these different multiverse. Our Earth is known as the 616 universe. So that's when people talk about the 616, even in movies, people that haven't even read a single comic book, they talk about the 616 universe. It all comes from the idea that Alan Moore created within the pages of Captain Britain. And I remember when I found out about that and talking to the comic book shop guys about it, they were like, oh yeah, of course. You know that's on purpose, right? You know that the original number of the beast was 616, not 666. Sure. Who's to say? Alan Moore's to say. But that story comes to an end, and of course Alan Moore ends up leaving the title, and Alan Davis eventually becomes kind of the new writer on the book. He does have some help from time to time, but he kind of saw a vision for Captain Britain, and he just really wanted to write the stories by himself, take it in different directions than most of the writers on the book. So one thing you're going to note, though, is that there is no Alan Moore on this book as far as the credits towards the very beginning. You can find his name on the actual credit pages, but not towards the beginning. Now, some people have written to me, why has Marvel done that? That was a decision made by him, not by the publisher. So they have to honor his decision, both in this and in Miracle Man. So, speaking of Miracle Man, I was going to talk just a little bit about that. One of the Earths that is destroyed has a character known as Miracle Man. But the interesting thing was, they couldn't use the name Miracle Man, so they used, or they couldn't use the name Marvel Man, so Alan Moore decided to use Miracle Man for a gravestone. Let me see if I can find the gravestone. Yeah, right here, this gravestone, Miracle Man. But then later on, you do have a character that looks like Marvel Man through here. But then later on, he did become known as Miracle Man. I always found that interesting. So yes, eventually Alan Davis does his own thing. He introduces the character of Megan. So if you're not familiar with her, she does appear in the pages of Excalibur, original Excalibur by Chris Claremont and Alan Davis, and Teenie Howard's Excalibur. She does look a little bit different, and there's a reason for that, other than the beautiful blonde that you're used to. And this right here is Linda. This is Linda McQuillan. Now, there is a story arc in here with Slaymaster. It is a really popular storyline if you've read the pages of New Mutants or X-Men, Uncanny X-Men by Claremont, because of what happens to Betsy Braddock. This is before she becomes Psylocke. But she does don the costume of Captain Britain for a little bit, and she is being mentored by Linda McQuillan. So something bad happens to her there that kind of is not resolved until the pages of New Mutants Annual number 2. So Captain Britain is canceled again, and we don't see him until the pages of New Mutants Annual number 2, which is the restoration of Betsy Braddock. And towards the end of this, so this is her first American appearance. Again, another one of those, should I get the UK appearance or should I get her first American appearance when I was a kid? But by the end of this, Betsy decides to stay with the X-Men. She kind of joins the New Mutants as a kind of like a caretaker at first, but then eventually becomes an X-Men. We also have Annual 11 in here, which is the Horde storyline, which is the team-up of Captain Britain. It's one of my favorite stories because of what Wolverine does here. No, not Kiss Storm. Does something else to defeat Horde. This is really cool because all the backups are included in here, which we'll get to here in a second. But first, let's talk about these Marvel Tale stories, which reprinted Captain Britain 1 and 2, recolored, and the pages were reshuffled in a different chronological order. Still the same script by Claremont, but just different. And then here we have the Hulk comic, and in here they revamped the story of Captain Britain to tie more into the stories that were happening in the Hulk ongoing comic with the Nether Gods. So his origins kind of, I don't want to say retconned, they just kind of throw the Nether Gods in there, which that's what was happening through the pages of the Black Knight storyline and the Captain Britain storyline and the Hulk comic. Here's the original 5 pages of Captain Britain from Marvel Superheroes 377 before they expanded it to more pages. It was originally done in 5 pages. Extras in the back, including the mask that came, I think, with the first issue. I guess you could cut it out yourself if you want to. There is a story in here by Grant Morrison, but I wanted to get over here with the birth of Captain Britain. It's interesting to go through these. So this was an idea, right, by Larry Lieber, pretty much helming it. But Chris Claremont and Herb Trimpe are known as the creators of Captain Britain, but they don't remember who designed the original costume. A lot of people seem to think that it's John Romita Sr., because he was designing all the costumes back then, including characters like Wolverine. So it could be him. I'm assuming it's him. Here's some art by Ron Wilson back there. House ads. Original pages. Here's the Alan Davis sketchbook when Paul Neary asked him to redesign Captain Britain. And not just him, but also his sister Betsy and all these supporting casts. Here's the original... well, what eventually will become TechNet with Legion, who no longer goes as Legion. Cobweb, who's lost still, I think. And this is interesting. This is to because of a limited budget for new art, Alan Davis drew inkwash tones in Daredevils 1, placing the panels together by size and shape rather than sequence to conserve artboard. Yeah, there's always been talk as to why people left the Marvel UK books, because apparently there was a shortness of checks going around. I don't know. This is mainly talking about the book. So here we have some covers. This is from The Birth of a Legend, and this is the Ron Wilson cover. It's from the hardcover that I was talking about. And this is the way that I originally read these stories, was through the X-Men archives. This is before trade paperbacks were a big thing, even though I did have an old Captain Britain trade paperback. New covers by Alan Davis, reprinting those early stories of him and Alan Moore's Captain Britain. But I think there were 6 or 7 of these, if I'm not mistaken. This is what they use for the art on the board. So yeah, in here you get to see all his characters that later on appear in the pages of Excalibur, like Saturnine, Gatecrasher, and TechNet, Vixen, Slaymaster, who they talk about. So Captain Britain isn't your average superhero. There are a lot of things that he did that are kind of questionable as far as like, that wasn't a very superheroic thing to do. Here's the cover gallery to Super Spider-Man and Captain Britain. Even though it didn't include Captain Britain, they still wanted to collect them. And the same thing as the Hulk comic. It's all in here. And there's Daredevils right there, which he didn't last very long on Daredevils or the Mighty World of Marvel. Now, as far as the binding of this particular book, this is sewn binding. Here's what the eye looks like. This is printed at the iMac printer. So one thing I did want to note was sometimes, especially through the black and white art, some of the art from the other page comes through from the other opposite side. Again, I always like to remind people the way that I have my setup. I have 3 LED lights pointed at the book to get rid of shadows. And look, we still have some. It's just impossible. But anyway, so it's not your usual way of reading a book. But I did want to point that out as, it bothers some people. It doesn't bother others. Compared to the original printing, putting the original printing or the Captain Britain Omnibus printing here on the right-hand side and this new expanded printing here on the left. So, could be my eyes, but this looks like it's a little bit bigger than this. Could be that there's some writing up there. But let's compare these pages right here. Okay, just moving things around because it looks like it is the same size. It's just that they have a banner up here and they actually have the credits down here, whereas here's just a blank space down at the bottom. But everything else, including colors, look identical to the original Captain Britain Omnibus, which is good. Let's compare it to another page. Again, the original printing here, and this is the newer printing on the left-hand side. Colors honestly look identical. I mean, Maybe it's a little bit darker in the original printing, but that could be because of the paper that they were using back then. This is over 10 years old, so they were using thicker, glossier paper back then. But no difference as far as the art and the colors. But that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. If you live in Europe and are interested in pre-ordering or purchasing Omnis, then you should definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices for Marvel and DC big books within the EU. Flat shipping of €9.90 for EU countries, extremely careful and sturdy packaging, emails are answered within 24 hours, and they have a superb selection of new releases and out-of-print books on their website. Just head over to waltzcomicshop.com for more great deals and rare titles. And for a limited time, you can use the code NEARMINTCONDITION, all one word, at the checkout for free shipping to all EU countries with your first order. Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this omnibus. Let me know in the comments down below if you are picking this up, which cover you're going to get. If you have the original omnibus, are you going to upgrade or keep your original omnibus, if those are the only stories that interest you? If you've never read any of these stories, let me know in the comments down below, especially if you have any more questions. This was the Uncanny Omar. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to smash that like button. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Ring that bell for notifications to let you know when our videos are going live. We are on Spreadshop and Patreon. Amazing ways to support the channel if you can do so. And more importantly, everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.